Now it's like he's not even the same quarterback that he was back then. I think it just really would have been throwing good money after bad. And you know what? The one thing that I was really surprised is I'm surprised that Petty didn't really go all in and say, you know what? Manziel's going to be our quarterback for the rest of the season. Because really, there's no reason not to do that. Because if he wins, of course he starts next week. If he loses, you're essentially out of the playoffs. And he should start the last 2 games, just again to see what you have, build some experience and kind of a body of work, so you know what you're going to do next year. And so you see how good is, so you can have some clue as to whether he's ready to be your starter in 2015 or if you throw open the competition one more time. So I'm surprised he didn't really try to bolster his confidence even more and say, you know what, we're going to give you the keys for the rest of the season.
Well, but he kind of already made that point earlier in the season that the guy is the guy, and we're going to stick with the guy. We don't do the, sticking your foot in the middle thing. So he kind of already stressed that this year about Hoyer. So I think it goes maybe unsaid what you just said about that, because as you said, either way it goes, you have 2 options. I mean, you're either going to win, and that means it didn't go that badly, so you can probably put him back out there again, or you're going to lose, and then it doesn't matter, and the kid's going to play anyway. But I think he left himself open because of that X factor, and that's what worries me. We keep coming back to question marks like that. Like I saw Jay Glazer this week question several times, not the decision, because Hoyer left you no choice, as we keep saying, with the way his play had been trending, each week getting worse than the week before for the last month, but the fact that it took all of that and that the change wasn't made, and the fact that even now, as you said, he's our guy, but there's still the pause, the hesitation to go 100% all in. It's a lot like, hey, we're excited, let's see what happens, but I can definitely envision a scenario, because I'll tell you what, Mike Pettin strikes me as the kind of coach that if the Browns defense is playing very lights out like they did last week in the first half, and Manziel turns the ball over 2 or 3 times in the first half, I could see a situation where if the Browns feel, and I'm not saying they're going to change, I'm not saying, I didn't want Hoyer looking over his shoulder, I don't want Manziel looking his shoulder either. But just like he said, because what you said, it's that whole whatever gives us the best chance to win each week. That's the mentality that he's using, whether it's right or wrong, whether you like it or don't like it. That mentality is how I could easily see him saying, hey, kid, it's just not there today. We've got to try to win this game. Same reason that people argued for the opposite 2 weeks ago when bringing in the spark plug off the bench. I mean, if it seems like there's too many holes in the boat and they're being caused at quarterback, I can see that. Otherwise, I mean, I do believe it would take an injury, but I think people just should not underestimate that part either. You know what I mean? I truly don't think that people should underestimate that part either, because he has to stay alive for 4 quarters too.
That's right, he does. And I think that in order to make this work, and I think that this can work. I think you mentioned the defense, how well the defense has been playing, how the defense totally shut the Bengals down in their house on Thursday Night Football. I think this is a situation where Manziel can succeed if the entire team supports them. And by that, I'm talking about the defense playing very well and the running game playing very well. Because if you look back to that first game, of course, everything just went right for the Browns in that game. But we ran for 170 yards, carried the ball 52 times. Now, obviously, that's really just the best-case scenario. But I would love to see the defense, the Cincinnati Bengals defense, be so focused on stopping Manziel that they don't stop, Terrence West and Isaiah Crowell, and, that they really take the burden of this game and make it so Manziel doesn't have to throw the ball 40, 50 times his first time out there. Just put him in a real comfortable position. I'm sure he's going to be comfortable, but put him in a position where he doesn't have to carry the whole offense, and he can, make some good plays. And just, I think really the best thing that the Browns can do, whether they're running or passing, is just to hang on to the ball. I know that's kind of obvious, but that's really been the problem the last couple of weeks. I think our defense is playing so well that as long as we don't turn the ball over, we're going to be fine, simply because how well our defense is playing.
And I agree with you there. That's going to be something to keep an eye on as well here heading into this game. Jeff Gorman, Browns101.com. J-Rock here. We're talking about the Browns and the Bengals coming up. And regardless of the quarterback, as we talked about earlier with JK, there's a lot of other factors to this game. Quarterback on the other sideline, how the Browns defense is going to show up and play. Will Joe Hayden continue to do well against A.J. Green? Will they be able to stop Mohamed Sanu this time as well, because he's been such a key to the Bengals defense? How are the Bengals going to bounce back from being embarrassed the way they did? And they've now given up 40-plus to 2 consecutive divisional opponents in the last 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, what mindset do they come in with as well? These are all factors outside of how Manziel plays. But to wrap up the quarterback thing with the Browns, as you said, I mean, Kyle Shanahan talked about it this week, the things that they're going to do. And I'll tell you what, you talk about pass attempts. Mike Pettin, I like where he was at, and I know there's a lot of futuristic NFL fans that say, oh, this guy is living in a time warp or whatever, but he said, man, if it was up to him, it doesn't matter if it's Hoyer, Manziel, whatever, he'd prefer to keep his quarterback attempts in the teens, keep them under 20. That means that you're running the ball, that you're dominating the line of scrimmage and the time of possession, and you're only throwing when you need to throw, when you need to get chunks downfield or so on and so forth. And, hey, man, that's the Seahawks formula a lot with Wilson. There's a lot of games where he's got low numbers in attempts because you don't need to throw the ball 30, 40 times a game when you're consistently running the ball well and when you're establishing the line of scrimmage. So keep that in mind. But they talked about using a lot of screen passes, a lot of dumps off to the running backs to kill off some of the pressure. The part that I laugh about is you could have done the same thing the last few weeks to kill off some of the pressure as well and to tweak the offense. I always wonder, and I guess we won't have an answer to this until after the season, if Brian Hoyer was not throwing to his backs or if his backs were not designed to be thrown to in the offense that he had going. You know what I mean?
Right. I guess we'll kind of find that out, on Sunday to see if Manziel, checks down to his backs, which, again, we didn't see Hoyer do much at all. That might answer that question. But,
because that's the easy way to jump up your completion percentage. When you're a 50% completion guy, if you just dump off 3 or 4 passes a game to your running backs, you're a 60% completion guy.
Right, and that, really answers a lot of questions and, again, makes everything kind of work a lot better. But the thing that you were talking about the Bengals defense, they gave up 185 yards to Le'Veon Bell last week, and the thing that he said was, we kept running the same play and they couldn't stop it. Now, if I'm the Browns coaching staff and I read that, I think we ran the same play and they couldn't stop it.
What was that
would
play?
Really put a big light bulb above my head and say, let's run the ball down these guys' throats and limit Manziel's, passing attempts, and maybe something good will happen, or at least something bad might not happen.
Let's run that play. Let's not just run the same play. Run that play that they couldn't stop over and over last week. If it's not in our playbook, I think the guys can learn one new play. Let's add that to what we throw at them this week. But you're right, and I'm with you. And I do think they've got to. You're going to have J.K. touched on it this doesn't take a genius. The energy that's going to be in the building, defensively, I really do think that the Browns are going to have an opportunity very early on, and I don't even care about what Johnny Football and the offense does. Defensively, I think the Browns from the get-go have a chance, much like they did against New Orleans earlier in the season, to take the Bengals out of their offensive game plan right away with the energy in the building if the defense, as I think they will, reacts accordingly. Just being that fired up. You've got a bad last week for Cincinnati. That's in Dalton's head. You've got the bad performance against the Browns, and the wind is still going to be blowing, and it's still going to be cold here in Cleveland. You've got the wind off of the lake here instead of what they've got down in Cincinnati. Same difference, same problems. All of that stuff in Dalton's head. I think the Browns defense, I think they can force a turnover early in this game and really shake the game plan. That's the key, man. Don't even let those guys get comfortable. Shut Hill down, shut the running game down. Don't let them even get comfortable on offense.
Right. I think that the Bengals are not going to react very well. I mean, say, well, maybe they'll bounce back. But, they had everything right in their hands. They had the Steelers they were beating the Steelers in the fourth quarter, and then they give up. They could have been 9-3-1 at this point. They could have iced this whole division. Now they're like, oh, my goodness, look at the situation we've put ourselves in.
Yep.
We've got to win on the road against Cleveland. They made it so difficult for themselves. And like you said, I think that if the Browns defense can hit them early, I think that can really get in their heads, because there's kind of a weird psychological thing going on with the Bengals. Like, we talk about these two comments, the midget comment, it's like, it's amazing. What I love about that is the whole fake corporate apology that came afterwards. I saw it, and I'm well, he's apologizing. Then I saw the whole thing, well, we also want to apologize to the little people of America. I'm like, now, wait a minute. He didn't care about the little people of America. He just wanted to call them a midget. Somebody in corporate went to him and said, look, you can't call people midgets. This isn't pro wrestling. You can't use that word. They don't want to be called that anymore. So it just really seemed like a really fake apology, and I think it would be hilarious if Manziel would score and then sort of squat down to about 3 feet tall and do the money sign. That would just be gorgeous. And then the other thing is Jeremy Hill. After we beat them handily, they said, boy, were the Browns better than you thought? But no, they were worse. They were worse than I thought. And the good thing is, for the Browns, is, the defense is going to be needing him, because just recently, going into this week, actually, they decided to go with just one back rather than alternating with Hill and Giovanni Bernard. I mean, Bernard is a very good running back, and he's healthy,
yes,
but they just decided to go with, one back, and Hill is going to be their guy. So the Browns defense, and Hayden says, we're still not getting the kind of respect that we deserve. They're going to get to meet Hill and say, oh, are we as good as you thought we were? So there's a whole lot of psychological factors, as well as just being the home team, that I think are playing into the Browns' favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Much like we use the term trending downward, the body of work offensively for the Browns in the quarterback position, the defense has been trending upward for the last 6-8 weeks now. We've talked about the numbers, 28 turnovers in the last 2 months and all of that. So I think that defense is definitely trending upwards. That's the side of the ball that I think for everybody that's excited about the quarterback, and I understand that because it's the unknown. J.K. hit it on the head with what he said. What we'll know on Monday is, we won't know if he's a bust, but we'll know what the first game was like, and we'll know what we can expect out of Manziel going forward as a quarterback. We'll have some ideas for that stuff, but it's the true unknown, and that really is fun. Now, that, even if you're a guy that's, well, not necessarily, because there's guys sitting at home going, boy, I hope Manziel breaks his leg. I always said I can never get the mentality of people that do stuff like that. But if you take those people out, even the people that don't think Manziel's going to do well, they're all looking to this like, man, I am intrigued as hell by what's going to happen in this game. You know what I mean? And I think that is that's a fun and an excitement that hasn't been around a late season Browns game in a long time. How much of it reeks of desperation? I don't know. A lot of it probably to a lot of people, but it's excitement, and that part is cool. That building, I don't care what Joe Blow sitting there listening to me right now thinks, if he's a bust or not. That building's coming into the house on Sunday, and they're going to be more excited than they've probably been, at least since the early part of this season, if not going back further. And the only reason I say that is because we've talked this year about how strong that home crowd has been, so I can't say that they haven't been more amped up than usual this season, but this is going to take that, I think, to another level, because you've got a combination of the people who really do think that the savior is coming down from the sideline, and you've got another group of people who are just excited to see if the kid's any good, and you've even got the group of people wanting to see him fail, but that's still a whole lot of people watching this game.
That's right. It's going to be very exciting. And I think just the style of play that Manziel has, and the people who have watched him in college, they might think that he's kind of gimmicky. But then that's what, of course, his detractors are going to say. And I think if he was more of a classic drop-back passer, I don't think there would be maybe this much excitement. But obviously, if the Browns drafted him in the first round, and of course there were people who wanted him to be drafted like around number 4. So there's obviously people in the NFL who, think that Manziel has the chance, not the likelihood, but the possibility of becoming not just a starter, but really a great quarterback. Because when you take a quarterback in the first round, you're picking someone you think can eventually lead you to the playoffs on a regular basis. So this is where we start to find out. The Browns made that investment. They didn't draft him in the 4th round. They drafted him in the 1st round. And so this is going to be our quote-unquote franchise quarterback. And eventually, no matter what his style, this is the guy you're hitching your wagon to and seeing if he can take you to the stars. And I think it is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think that the people who run the Browns, I can't always say this in the past, but I think they know what they're doing. And I think that since they, drafted Manziel and they know the talent that he has, I think that